Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar, Introduction to Dynamics 365 Business Central. I'm Marcus Haug and I will be hosting for today. We've got several people on the line today, so we are going to be using the questions section that's part of GoToWebinar. So if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to type your question in there. If it is relevant in the area that I'm working on, I'll be happy to answer it. If not, we'll save them to the end, and then we will have a little bit of time at the end of the presentation today for questions as well. So let's get started. Agenda for today, talk a little bit about what is Dynamics 365 Business Central. We're going to look at the user interface. We'll cover some feature functionality of General Ledger, the sales cycle, purchasing cycle, inventory, and then additional modules as we have time. I'm Marcus Haug, Managing Director here at Boyer and Associates. And again, thanks for joining us. Boyer and Associates, we are about making businesses better. So we do what we can to help our clients be better at what they're doing. So leveraging technology to be better organizations. So we are about maximizing your investment in your ERP solutions, making sure that you understand how your solutions works, and then leveraging, again, the best that you can. A little bit about Boyer and Associates. We were founded in 1994 by Jack Boyer. We've got about 325 clients. Most of those are in the Twin Cities metro area, although we have clients in North, South Dakota, Iowa, Wisconsin, and then we've got clients actually on both coasts, California, New York, as well as Texas. So we do cover the country, but primarily our client base is in the Twin Cities. Currently have 18 staff people, and we are a Microsoft Gold certified partner. Core values, we are about trust, effort, attitude, and meaningful relationships. So trust, we want to be people and a partner that our clients can trust. We want to give forth 100% effort in whatever we're working on, working towards. We want to maintain a positive attitude. We realize oftentimes changing systems, evaluating systems, dealing with systems can be very stressful for your employees and your teams. So we want to keep a positive attitude while we're working through problems and issues and implementations. And then we want to be about meaningful relationships. So we have clients that have been with us since the very beginning. One in particular, I believe, was a deal Jack sold the first year he was in business, and they are still a client of ours today. So long-term meaningful relationships. Sometimes, well, actually all the time. All the time that means we are about making decisions for the long-term benefit of our relationship, not just a short-term benefit. Some of the things that we help clients do is eliminate islands of information. We do work hard to make clients self-sufficient, which means we want you to know how the software works, how to use the software, how it's been implemented. Again, we've found that we have the longest term relationships and the most successful relationships with clients that are fairly self-sufficient. So we are going to work hard to help you be that way. And then we will also help our clients work through process improvements. So I often use the term software-enabled process improvements, which means evaluating current business processes based on a new application is an important thing to do. And that is often means that there are processes that should be changed. What we find is that is the most cost-effective way, and long-term it's best for the clients if they're willing to adapt processes to meet processes that are in the software. It's not always the case, so we certainly do customizations and all sorts of other things, but we help you think through those changes. Products and services that we offer 3 ERP products from Microsoft, currently our only partner. We do Dynamics GP, Dynamics SL, and then Dynamics 365 Business Central, which is the product that we are going to be looking at today. There are 2 implementation options for Dynamics 365 Business Central. One of them is a cloud deployment, and that's what we're going to focus on today. But this product will also run on-premise if that is the choice that a client wants to make. But again, we are going to be focusing on the cloud option today. Services that we offer: project management, implementation, support, integrations, customizations. We do management reporter training on a regular basis. That's the financial reporting tool that goes with Dynamics GP and Dynamics SL. Does not work with Dynamics 365. And then we do report development. Various tools, BI 360, Jet Reports, and Power BI are some of them. We also do SQL Server reporting services work, and we can do Crystal work as well. All right, so let's dig into the software. All right, so I'm going to connect to my Business Central tenant, and let's talk a little bit about sort of what is Dynamics 365 Business Central and what makes it unique. So as you see, it's in a browser, but it's also cloud-based. And if I open up the Waffle, which is the official name for Microsoft, if I open up the Waffle, you'll notice that Dynamics 365 Business Central is a part of the Office 365 family when it's deployed in the cloud. And on premise, that's a little different, but we're just going to again focus on the cloud. So it's part of the Dynamics 365 family of products. I always like to just make note that it is Business Central. It's a long name. If you Google feature functionality of Dynamics 365, there are several products that roll up into that family of products. So there's Dynamics 365 Sales, there's Field Service, there's Finance and Operations, but this product is Business Central. So you just want to make sure that you do look at feature functionality of the full product name, not just Dynamics 365. Okay, so we are in a browser and it's a cloud product. So what does that mean? And what we're finding with clients is there's a lot of misunderstanding about cloud and a lot of, well, everybody will say they run in the cloud, and that's really a spectrum of options for clients. And with Dynamics 365 on premise, we have the full spectrum available to you as well. But when we talk about Business Central in the cloud, what we're really talking about is SaaS, and what that means is software as a service. So there is no hardware in your environment. There's actually no software in your environment. 100% of the application is cloud-based. So what that means is I pay per user per month for access to the application, and a tenant is set up for your organization. It's linked into your Office 365 admin portal, and in terms of who has access to the application, that's all managed through the admin portal of Office 365. So what are the implications of this? What it means is I don't have a software purchase. I, again, buy a subscription, which is, again, per user per month basis. So I have no initial cash outlay for software licenses. I have no hardware costs. So in a traditional ERP system, and if you ran 365 on premise, you would have hardware in your environment. You would need to buy SQL Server. You'd have Windows Server licensing involved. You'd have access licenses involved. You'd buy user access licenses, that sort of thing. A server in your environment, you're going to maintain in terms of backups, you're going to maintain in terms of security. The software is installed on a local system, which means patches and upgrades and all that sort of stuff needs to be on your local system. With the cloud version of Business Central, that's not the case. So Microsoft maintains the back end of the application, 100% of that. So all the hardware Microsoft maintains and manages. The software licensing is all included in your subscription license. Backups, disaster recovery, redundancy, all that's taken care of by Microsoft. In terms of applying patches, if there's bugs or service packs that need to be applied, Microsoft does that, and they actually do them overnight. And upgrades, Microsoft maintains the system completely in terms of upgrades. So Microsoft released a major update in October, and we've got almost 30 clients currently running this product, and the upgrade happened overnight. So users came in and their system was updated. The nice thing about that is there's no downtime, there's no cost, there's no management from the client's perspective. Microsoft does all that for you. The downside is Microsoft does it for you. So in terms of not wanting to upgrade, well, you have to upgrade. Your system will get upgraded along with everybody else's. So there can be some downsides to that. Quite frankly, I think we only had 2 clients that had some minor problems during this upgrade in October, which I would say is a huge success for the first time through. So, and one of them actually just panicked because the user interface had some changes to it. Once we talked them through the changes that were there, they were off and running in a couple hours. So I would say very minor in terms of issues that any of our clients had, and 20 some of them never even called us. Their system upgraded and they didn't have any issues. So again, Microsoft maintains it. Microsoft maintains patches, updates, upgrades, and you don't have to deal with any of that stuff. So in terms of cons, it's not on premise. So access to the data, access to the database, for example, is not an option, but access to the data is facilitated, and Microsoft has provided ways to do that via web services. But if you are, an IT person that would like to actually access the tables and the SQL Server and that sort of thing, that's not an option with a SaaS product. The nice thing about that is you can't mess it up. So using a web service, you're using the business logic layer, and you really can't get bad data. You probably could get bad data into the system, but it's going to be a lot harder than, let's say, accessing the database directly. With those web services, there are a lot of reporting options, and I'll talk about a couple of those today, but not having direct access to the data doesn't necessarily mean you're limited in reporting. In terms of customizations, this system is customizable. So that was a major shift that happened in October. As a client, if you have web developers, or if you've got developers, I guess they don't have to be web developers, but if you have developers in your staff, you have access to create extensions, which would mean you can create you can add columns to tables, you can add tables to the database structure, you can create your own pages. So that's all available to you. If you needed more, or if you needed some more extensive customizations, we can help you with that. So a partner can help and create code and that sort of stuff around the application. So it is customizable as of October on the client side. And there's also a lot of extensions that can be added to the application, and those are just installed all via online. So I can add, such as an Avalara sales tax, or we've got extensions to do credit card processing, all that sort of stuff. All part of the product, and those are just add-ons that you can put into the product. And you actually don't even need a partner to do it. Most of them you can do on your own. So that gives us a sense of what we're specifically talking about with Business Central in the cloud. So it's SaaS product. Again, no hardware, no software on your side, subscription-based in the cloud. No backups, no maintenance, none of that. Dynamics 365 Business Central can be run on premise, but it could also be run, quote unquote, in the cloud using like Microsoft Azure services, for example. So you could still have an environment that allowed you on premise like interaction with the application, but in the cloud, which would mean I'm renting server space and that sort of thing. The downside of that is you still have to do your maintenance. So if you want to do maintenance and manage your upgrades and that sort of thing, it's still an option without having any software or hardware on premise. Okay, so that's sort of an overview. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the user interface. So again, I'm browser based. I'm using Chrome today. I, on my machine, have Edge, Firefox, Chrome, and IE installed. I've also run it with Opera without any problems. And we have two clients that they're probably over 20 users apiece, and their primary users are on Mac, so they use Safari. And so they're able to run the application on a Mac with a browser, no problem. The user access is, again, set up through your Office 365 tenant, but I have access from anywhere. So if I'm at home, if I'm at the office, if I'm in Aruba sitting on the beach, I have access to the application as long as I have my user ID and a password and an internet connection. Okay, so I don't have to deal with, as an organization, VPN connections and all that sort of stuff. Don't have to deal with it. It's browser-based, secure connection from anywhere. Microsoft also does provide two apps. So there are apps that are tablet-focused or phone-focused for Windows, Android, or iOS, and those are free to download. So any user can download the apps themselves, get them installed, and then the configuration is as simple as a user name and password. So same thing, I would log in via browser, I can get the apps up and going. Apps are fully functional. So the tablet app, I'm going to say, is 95% functional. The phone app is probably 90% functional, and it just deals with, there's a couple of specific features that use some different grid forms that just don't render correctly on a tablet and on a phone. So it deals more with screen real estate than functionality, but these operations just don't work on a phone. But in terms of entering transactions, posting transactions, looking up transactions, fully functional clients in a tablet or phone. So if you have salespeople in the field, or if you've got a CFO, CIO kind of person that's got a phone and they want access to know where orders are, where inventory levels are, that sort of thing, phone, they can just download it and get them up and running themselves. So it's a very nice feature. Okay, so when I log into the application, I'm going to be logging into a company. So Kronos USA is my demo database. And then I'm going to have a role. And a role is going to dictate what this initial landing page looks like for me as an end user. So currently I'm in as a business manager. So if I come up here and say my settings, I can see that my role is currently a business manager. And I could change my role to something else. It doesn't change what I have access to. It only changes how this user interface works. This is also where I would change companies. So as a business manager, I have broad visibility across the organization. So you see, I can see finance, cash, sales, purchasing, et cetera. With this access, then this allows me to navigate. So most of the navigation is not more than 2 clicks. So finance, general journals, for example, to get me to a journal entry. But there's going to be things that are on this role center that are focused around my job or my role. So again, I brought access here as a business manager. If I was in a sales role, for example, these self-service extensions would go away, cash management would go away, finance would go away, and this is laid out more as a salesperson would want to see. So I'm going to see customers and items and shipping statuses and that sort of thing. All right. This little insights is a glimpse into Microsoft's leveraging of artificial intelligence. So if you've been watching any NFL football lately, you've probably noticed that Microsoft is advertising quite a bit their AI, so artificial intelligence platform. And this is one example of how that platform is integrated out of the box with Business Central. And it's analyzing your data and giving you information that it thinks might be relevant to your business or your role, that sort of thing. A couple other places that artificial intelligence has also been integrated into the product. The first one is in the inventory module. So there is a sales or a inventory level forecast that I'm able to run in inventory. And what it does is it uses the artificial intelligence engine to analyze my inventory and tell me what it anticipates my inventory balances are going to be in the future. And if I've got deficiencies, for example, or overstocked items. The interesting thing about this is it is not just using a linear regression model. So using the artificial intelligence model, it can predict things like seasonality of items or items that are trending down or up. Okay, so that's one example. Another example is in the cash flow area, in the finance area, they're using the artificial intelligence to predict cash flow. So what do I have in sales and purchases, and what have I had? Again, looking at some seasonality trends that could be in there. And then the last place is some intelligent predictions on late payments is another thing they've added. So I can look at a customer aging, for example, and the system is going to attempt to tell me or flag transactions that it anticipates are going to be late. And then that would just help me obviously run my business, give me more information than they couldn't just out of the box. So that's the insights. This activity section is about queues. And so a queue can be a dollar amount like I see here. It could be a transaction count like I see down here in sales quotes, or average days collected, for example, is a calculation. And the idea behind the queue is it's going to present information to me that's relevant for my role, and it's going to alert me if there's problems with that queue or not. And those conditions on alerts are set by your organization. So I can set a queue to be neutral, which is no condition, gray, green, yellow, or red. So then anybody in the organization that has that queue is going to see the same condition. So for example, overdue purchase invoices is $73,000. That's a red condition. So anybody that has that queue on their role center is going to see that. So they not only present me information, but this is navigation. So if I want to look now at what overdue purchase invoices there are, I click on that and I'm going to get a list of them. Okay. If I think of let's say unprocessed payments, it's going to give me one, so I can drill into that. Outstanding invoices, but I've set up queues, or other role centers have got queues set up for them for things like sales orders that are ready to ship. So if I've got inventory quantity available, they've been released, now they're going to show up in the queue for shipment. I've got an expected PO receipts queue. So my warehouse operator can look at that queue and see, well, what's expected to come in today? They don't have to run a report. They just monitor that queue and it's going to tell them. Pick, pack, ship, all those sort of functions work great with queues. But still looking at, what are my overdue sales invoices, or what do I have for sales so far this month? So examples of some queues. Down in the insight section, one thing I've got here is the ability to add some charts. So these are dictated by the chart or by the role. So these are the ones that are tied with this role. So there's other charts tied with other areas in the application. But this one, for example, is the aged accounts receivable report. So I always have this report that's visible to me right on my role center. This is an interactive report. So if I hover over it, it's going to tell me what the dollar amount is of that segment of the chart. But if I click on it, it's also going to give me a filtered list view that's going to present the data that makes up that component of the chart. So if you think of a cash flow forecast or an inventory valuation or accounts payable aging, accounts receivable aging, these are all dynamic reports. One thing to note about this Roll Center is it's live. So as transactions are posted in the system, my Roll Center updates to reflect that data. So I always have a current up-to-date view of my system. Right down here on the left, this is my favorite accounts. So there's several my favorites that are available on Roll Centers. I can monitor accounts, customers, vendors, jobs. There's one more. Accounts, customers, vendors, jobs. Oh, and items. So there's the 5. And what this allows me to do is, as an end user, I can select and manage my own list of these things. So in this case, I'm looking at GL accounts. So this is essentially a flash report. So I'm looking at my cash, I'm looking at savings, accounts receivable, accounts payables. Maybe I put my line of credit on here. So I can always see where are we operating in terms of cash. These numbers are live, so as transactions are posted into the system, they're going to correctly reflect and update the balance here. These numbers are teal, and it may be a little hard to see on the webinar, but a teal number is drill down enabled. So if I want to look at petty cash, 96,000 seems a little high. I can drill into that and say, well, what's going on with that account? And I can go in here and look at, oh my gosh, there's a whole bunch of payments that have been posted to my petty cash account. Well, what are those? I have the ability then under actions here to navigate. And what this is going to allow me to do is to navigate around all the associated transactions that are connected to that payment. So a posted sales invoice, for example. There it is. There's one. So I can click on the number 1 here and drill in further, and I can say, oh, well, this is the posted sales invoice that's been paid with that payment. And then I could look at the line items, I could look at the customer, whatever I want to see on it. Next thing I can do is I could look at the GL entry. So there's 14 lines that have been created from this posting transaction, and I now have visibility to all the GL accounts that were impacted based on the transaction that was posted. So I can see there's some inventory cost stuff here, there could be some discounts, etc. I've got availability to all the tax details. Customer ledger entries and detailed ledger entries tell me how maybe the payments have been applied, if there'd been a previous credit or return, something like that, I'd have visibility to that. And then value entry gives me costing information. So if there's inventory related to the transaction, I'm going to drill into the value entry to see maybe inventory cost information. So from essentially 2 clicks here, off of a petty cash balance, I'm able to do a tremendous amount of research. So that drill down capability is available anywhere that I see a teal number. Same thing over here. This is a trial balance, so showing me some financial information. But I want to look at total revenue, $2,000. Well, what is it? I can drill into it, and now I'm looking at a financial report. So I can see what accounts make up the balance. There's a $2,000 net change in a revenue account. I can click on that, and now I'm into journal entries. If I click on actions and navigate, I now can again see posted sales invoices, the GL entry, tax information, all that. So very quick and easy for an end user to do a tremendous amount of research on their own. Bottom left over here is a report inbox. So the majority of the reports in Business Central, I have the ability to schedule. So if I want to come in the morning and have a age payables, age receivables report, inventory valuation, whatever I want, I can schedule those reports and have them show up here. All those reports are also I have the ability to run them as of a date. So if I want to see an AR aging as of the October 31st, the report parameters allows me to run it as of the 31st. It'll back out invoices, payments, etc., and put me back to as I was. Last section on the Roll Center is a Power BI report. So Power BI is a data visualization tool, part of the Office 365 family of products. The nice thing about BI reports is these are interactive, they're not static. So if I highlight this, you'll notice that I have the ability to filter and interact with these reports just like I would in Power BI. What I really like about this is if I have users that are viewing reports that I don't necessarily want in my Business Central system, I can give them access to that data using Power BI. And they're going to be looking at the same reports I'm looking at. So $2,000 is $2,000. It doesn't matter if I'm looking at a Power BI report in Power BI or if I'm looking at a Power BI report in Business Central. There isn't going to be confusion about which number is right, etc. So that's the beauty of that. If I come in here and I say select reports, This is the set of sample data reports that Microsoft provides with Business Central. These reports are fully customizable. You can decide to use them, not use them, do whatever you want with them. But it's a set of sample reports to show you how Power BI can get connected with your Business Central system. A couple other places we're going to see those Power BI reports, and I'll draw your attention to them when we get there. Okay, so this is the Role Center. The Role Center is fully customizable, so we can help you, or you can do it by adding cues, taking cues away, rearranging this stuff, making it work and function like you want to. Users have some ability to personalize it as well. So as an end user, I can come in and I can, for example, if I don't want to see sales invoices that are predicted to be overdue, so that's that artificial intelligence engine. If I don't want to see that, I can come in here and I can say hide, I can move it, I can do whatever I want to make this Role Center personalized to my use. An end user can't create their own queue, but that's certainly a customization that can be done in the system. All right, so let's go to dig into some other feature functionality. Let's go to the general journal, and I want to talk a little bit about finance transactions, and particularly around general ledger. So the first thing, actually, I'm going to just show fewer columns to condense this down. So in terms of a journal entry, obviously I have a GL account number. The next thing that's unique about Business Central is we use dimensions. So most accounting systems are going to have some sort of segment structure or sub-account structure that you're going to create. And I've done consulting for 20 years. I know one of the first conversations we have with clients is, you know, how do you want your sub-account structure working? So do you want departments and product lines and that sort of thing? And we create, you know, maybe 3-3-3 as your segment structure, your sub-account structure. And then we're not really sure what the fourth one might be, but we'll create a fourth one and we'll create it at all zeros. With Business Central, we don't do that. What we do is we set up dimensions. So a dimension in this example, I've got a department code as a dimension. So administrative, production, sales, I'm tracking those departments. I'm doing grants. So this is a setup for a nonprofit demo. I've got 3 projects that I'm working on that I've gotten grants for, and I want to tie all my finances to a grant. But other things that you could use for dimensions could be a product line, it could be a salesperson, it could be a territory, right? So things that you would typically categorize in that sub-account we set up as dimensions. Then what we do is we create dimensional rules that tie to an account number. So for example, if I'm gonna post a transaction to cash, so down here at the bottom tells me what account number I'm going to. So if I'm posting to a petty cash account, department probably isn't relevant. So in most systems, what we've created is a segment or a sub-account structure that's all zeros. So when I post to a balance sheet account, I type in all zeros and then we move on. With Business Central, what we do is we set up rules to say under what conditions or what dimensions are valid for specific accounts. So in my example here of petty cash, I would say that a department is actually excluded from being categorized on a petty cash transaction. Okay, so if an end user attempts to classify a department on a petty cash transaction, it's going to give them an error message that says you can't do that. But if I wanted to track, let's say, revenue by product line, okay, if I attempt to post a revenue transaction without a product line on it, it's going to error and it's going to say, no, I require one. Or a department expense, for example. So if I'm looking at a travel expense, I probably want to track a department on a travel expense. So in that case, I would get an error if a department code wasn't supplied. Okay, so these rules mix and match then to say what dimensions are required or not required based on the account number. And then financial statements can be run including or by dimensions. So I can do dimensional analysis by rows, by columns, or an entire report. So that's a unique feature of Dynamics 365. Another unique feature, if we look over here, I have the ability to do other types of things other than just a journal entry in a journal entry. So it's not just debits and credits to GL accounts. I have logic to actually accrue for tax liability. So for example, if a journal entry also has tax implications, I can record that at the time of entering my transaction. I'm going to expand this a little bit and I'm going to show more columns and also give you another viewpoint here that I can create journal entries to customers, vendors, bank accounts, fixed assets, ICs, intercompany. So we do have a full intercompany capability within the system, or an employee. What this allows me to do is essentially create journal entries for, let's say, low balance write-offs, or if I've got an additional finance charge, or if I have a bank fee. So creating a journal entry for a bank fee, I would debit or credit my bank account which is going to keep my banking subledger in balance, and then it will also then post to the general ledger to keep my cash account in balance. Same thing with customers, vendors. Okay, so it's some of our clients use this, love it. Some of our clients have no need for it, but it just shows you the depth of the product and feature functionality that's available to you. All right, other things in finance, we do have the ability to track fixed assets. It's a full fixed assets module, multiple books, multiple depreciation methods will automatically create your journal entries. As I said before, we have multiple companies that are available. So your license allows you to set up as many companies as you want. I suppose there is a limit at some point, but I don't know of one of how many companies you can set up. And then you can enable intercompany processing if you want between the companies, or just keep them separate. Security is by user by company as well. So if I've got companies to keep users out of, I can set that up. It's all independent of each other. I have the ability to do budgets, so we can set up as many budgets as we want to within the finance area, tie those to GL accounts, and they're available for reporting. The system is also fully multi-currency enabled. So if you're operating in as many currencies as you want, we can process those transactions, keeping account balances, bank balances, processing sales orders, purchase orders, et cetera, with as many currencies as you want. There's all the revaluations and all that sort of stuff. Rolling out or rounding out the cash or the finance areas, cash management. So cash management has several areas of functionality, and I like to call them out separately because they're independently configured and maintained. The nice thing about that is for security purposes, I can segregate these duties out if needed. So cash management, for example, I've got the ability to do bank recs and manage my bank accounts. Well, that's independent from the ability to get to the cash account from a GL perspective. Okay, so I can do bank recs, I have the ability to download my bank statement from my bank and automate some of that sort of thing. Cash management module. I've got a cash flow module, and what that's going to do is it's going to allow me to monitor transactions in the system. I can also take budgets and fold those into my cash flow forecast if I want to. And again, as I said, the artificial intelligence engine is being leveraged in that module as well. And then I've got a cost accounting set of modules, which would allow me to again, do cost accounting analysis without muddying my general ledger. So one of my jobs at one point in my life was doing some cost accounting work, and we sort of jerry-rigged the GL accounts to accommodate the analysis that I needed to do. And I did a lot of work pulling GL data. This works in a similar way, but I also have access to other areas of the system to create a subledger that can deal with cost accounting. So a unique component within the application that can be very useful for some people. So that's the overall sort of a broad view of finance. Next thing I want to do is actually go into the sales cycle. So we're going to come in here and I'm going to just open up this menu just so you get an idea of the breadth of the product here. So we have the ability to do blanket sales orders, sales quotes, sales orders, and a sales invoice. So 4 levels of options for clients to implement. All of them are optional. So if you don't do blanket sales orders, fine, you don't need to. If I don't want to do quotes, I don't need to do that. A sales order and a sales invoice can both process inventory. So I can ship inventory off of a sales invoice or a sales order. It's just the sales invoice is going to ship an invoice in one step, where the sales order could be broken out to say, I want to put an order in, and then I want to ship the order, and then I want to invoice the order. Okay, so it's multiple steps versus one step. Just completely depends on how the process that you're using works. We've got the ability then to do the full return side. So we've got a return order, a credit memo, and actually we've got the ability to do receipts against a customer return. So I can set up a return to establish an RMA. I can go through a receiving process in a warehouse to receive those goods back in, validate that they're good, bad, whatever I want to do with them in terms of disposition before I'd issue a credit. So full functionality there. But I'm going to start with a sales order. And one thing you'll notice is I get a list of sales orders. So these are open sales orders. So sales orders that are closed are called invoices. So I could look at invoices, or I could look at historical sales orders. But these are only going to be open transactions here, and they're going to be in a list. So talk a little bit about what a list can do. I have the ability to filter these fields. So I can sort ascending, descending. I can filter. I can set up multiple filters, etc. A lot of these lists are going to present calculated information. So for example, an amount and then an amount including tax. These are calculated fields on the list of sales orders. So a little unique feature, it's not just static information. If I had partial shipments, it would show me amount shipped but not invoiced, for example. I could see those. Over on the right, these are called fact boxes. These fact boxes are going to provide me more information about the record that I'm on. So in this case, I've got a Power BI report that's showing me some stuff. So this is the second point of integration with Power BI. Down here on the bottom, I'm going to get a bunch of customer statistics and that sort of thing. So this shows me more information about the record that I'm on. Could be customer related, could be order related, could be inventory related, etc. And not only can I see it, but I can drill into it. So as a salesperson or as somebody entering an order, I can look at it and I can see, well, what are the other outstanding orders? What's my credit limit on my customer? What's overdue for my customer right now? Right at my fingertips. I don't have to navigate anywhere else. There's also some visual cues that they're adding. So for example, the credit limit's $10,000. My available credit is negative $33,000. The red's telling me they're past their credit limit already. So visual cues help me manage my system. I'm going to open up a sales order and just talk through some of the feature functionality on the sales order process itself. So obviously a customer name, address, that sort of thing, pretty straightforward. I've got the ability then to expand this a little bit, and we can do a lot of other things. So I've got an entire series of dates here that can be pre-populated and calculated if I want to do this. So for example, requested delivery date. Maybe I've got a requested delivery date, a promised delivery date from my customer, or the salesperson made a commitment to my customer. I can track things like that. I can track a campaign. So there is a mini CRM module. I say mini CRM module in Dynamics 365 Business Central that would allow me to track orders against campaigns. I can track pricing against that campaign. I can also track opportunities. So if this order came from an opportunity that I had in the CRM side, I can drop that in. Okay, a lot of options in terms of workflow that could be added to this, process that can happen, etc. Let's go down to the line items. So on a sales order, what can I do? I can obviously sell an item, but I can do some other things. I can sell a GL account. So if I'm selling services that don't tie to necessarily a resource, or maybe it's just a service charge I want to add, that sort of thing, not tied to an item, I can create a GL line that I can sell. The nice thing about this feature of doing the GL line is I have the ability to ship it. I have the ability to calculate quantity and unit price. So if I want to show 3 units at X dollars with a total amount, and I actually want to go through the shipping process, I can do that with a GL account. Inventory items, obviously I can sell those. I can sell resources. So resources would primarily be people resources or machine resources that I want to sell. So if you think of time and materials, or I'm renting equipment, that sort of thing, I can do that. I can sell a fixed asset, which is an interesting feature. And then I could do a charge item. So a charge item could be some standard verbiage. Maybe I want to use, let's say, like the fuel surcharge or something like that I want to put on my order. I can select a charge item as a data entry person instead of a GL item. So typically you'd use GL or you'd use charge items depending on how you want to implement the system. All right, so let's look over here. Location. I've got the ability to set up multiple warehouse locations within Business Central. I can set up as many as I want. Location is also optional. So if you're running an organization maybe that only has one location, I don't need to populate location every time. I can actually leave it blank and take it off the system. But we can support multiple locations. Each of these locations is independently configured. And what I mean by that is we have full warehousing capabilities that are available to us, and those are configured by location. And we can be as simple as not using a location, so that would be the most vanilla install. But as your organization grows and you needed to do full bin tracking, let's say with zone picking and packing, directed picks, directed putaways, all that sort of stuff, those all can be configured in the system. So those are all features that can be turned on, and those are turned on by location. So if I have one location that's maybe a third-party fulfillment center, I don't need to track any of that. But if I have my own warehouse too, then I have another location that would be set up, and that's going to allow me to do full warehouse ships, warehouse receipts, picks, packs, all that sort of stuff with bins if I wanted to. Okay, so that's locations. Quantity, pretty straightforward. Unit of measure conversions, we've got full unit of measure conversions available by item. The nice thing about this one, and some people don't initially like it maybe, but it makes more sense, is piece and box and all that sort of stuff is defined by each item. So I would generically define a label called piece, and I could define a label called box but the relationship of pieces to boxes is item specific. So we work with several clients that, box doesn't always mean 12. It could mean 24, it could mean 3. And so each item can have its own unit of measure conversion. You can have as many as you want. You establish a base unit, and then you establish relationships between all of the other units that relate back to that base unit. So I can buy, sell in essentially any unit of measure that's been defined for the item. Unit pricing, so we've got the ability to do price lists and all that sort of stuff with discounts, so really feature functional around pricing. Taxes, the system does all of the tax tracking if you want to do it manually. We also integrate with several tax services, so Avalara is one of them, and then you can allow them to do all your tax processing, but it integrates out of the box. There's a fee for that, but it's available. All right, then I've got a couple fields here, quantity to ship and quantity to invoice. What this allows me to do is actually on the sales order, I can ship an invoice. So I don't need to, as we talked about, I don't need to implement the warehousing components if I don't want it. So if I don't need those pieces, I can ship right off the sales order. We have clients that run warehousing that have the salesperson actually processing the orders. They do it right here. They populate a quantity, ship quantity, invoice, and post it, and it's all done. So as you implement the system, these fields become more useful or less useful depending, again, on what features you're going to put in. We have the ability to do drop ships. So what a drop ship would do is I'd set up a drop ship on my sales order. Then I go over into purchasing and pull that sales order information onto a purchase order, and then have that purchase order set up to ship to my customer. When I process then the shipment on the customer side, it also closes out the AP side. So I don't have to go back and clean that up. Dates we talked about before are available also on the line item. So I can do planned shipment dates, delivery dates, all that sort of stuff by line item if I want to. I don't need to set up different sales orders in this case. As I showed you before, I have the ability to personalize this as well. So if I come in here and I say I want more fields, and I go down to my line items, you can see we've got a tremendous amount of functionality that's hidden behind the scenes that can be taken out off the lines if you don't use it, but it could also be added in if you want to. So again, intercompany transactions, you've got payment, prepayment options in here. You've got other dimensions that could be done. We've got the ability to do assembly orders or production orders off of the sales order. So assembly orders would be like a kit. It allows me to do a multi-level bill of material as an assembly. The thing you don't get with assemblies is a routing, but again, I can do multi-level bill of materials. Including labor, resource items. We also have a manufacturing set of modules that would allow you to do full manufacturing. So that's issuing materials, consuming materials, back flushing, taking care of routings, and again, you've got the multi-level bill of materials. So feature functionality that can be added or taken away, and this screen can get fairly straightforward and simple for data entry usage. Okay, email confirmation and printing. So we do have the ability to email and print, obviously, out of the application. Email is a little unique in the sense that I can either attach the document as a PDF to the email. I can embed the document into the body of the email, or I could do both. All right, and those are configurable globally, but I could override it based on a customer by customer basis if I wanted to. And then I also, in terms of documents, can set up custom documents by customer. So if I've got a sales order acknowledgement that needs to be in a specific format for one customer and a different format for another, I can have a generic one set up for everybody else, and those two customers can each get their own unique confirmation in this case. Just a note about output of documents. As I said before, I think the reports are Microsoft SQL Server reporting services. That's an RDL format is the default. We have the ability to then use Word templates on top of that if you want. So you can modify the RDL files and create your own reports, or you can use the Word template and modify the output. So in the case of a purchase order, sales order, invoice, sales order acknowledgement, all those documents, we generally work with our clients to create Word templates to lay on top of that. So that it gives you the full feature functionality of Word in terms of graphics and colors and all that sort of stuff, and you can easily maintain them on your own. So nice features there. Okay, in terms of processing a transaction, I've got the ability, as I said, to ship invoice or ship an invoice right from right from the sales order here, and then close out the document. Okay. We do have finance charges, we've got sales reminders, we've got multiple ship tos by customer, again, currency, terms, all those sort of things that we had talked about before in pricing. All right, I'm gonna go over to purchasing next. Oops, I didn't want to do that. So if we look at purchasing, same types of documents. So I have a blanket purchase order, I have a purchase quote, I have a purchase order, and then I have a purchase invoice. So what you notice is the feature functionality on the AR side and the AP side mirror one another. So we had a sales invoice, we have a purchase invoice over here. So if you're not using purchase order, you go right to a purchase invoice. So I'm going to pull up a purchase order and we can talk through that briefly. All right, so you see I select the vendor, and what you'll notice is a lot of the same features that I had on the AR side or the sales side of the equation I have on the purchasing side. So I've got multiple date layers, I've got assignments, responsibility centers, all sorts of things. If I don't want to show those, I can collapse that down and make these the screens fairly straightforward for my end users. So what can I buy? I can buy an item, so that's pretty straightforward, but I can also buy a GL account number. So again, we looked at services. So not only can I sell services or things that aren't inventory related on a sales invoice, I can buy those things. So we've got clients that maybe get services like advertising services, or they're going to buy marketing stuff. So they're buying 14 banners or something like that for a trade show. I can bring those in as a GL account transaction and still track a quantity and price. Okay, so I'm not locked into one at X dollars. I can do whatever I want on that. Other things that I can buy a fixed asset and I can buy charge items. Charge items is how we get landed cost taken care of. So if you're an import company, I actually met with one this morning. They bring in a lot of products from overseas, so they have tariffs and they've got import fees and all that sort of thing. You may not have all that information when you actually receive the items, or actually when you get invoiced from the vendor. With a charge item, I have the ability to update those cost layers even if the inventory isn't in stock anymore. So I could have sold the inventory, and then this charge item will allow me to either update the cost back in the period that the transaction was processed in, or process in the current period. But I can get an accurate margin analysis by item, by transaction, et cetera, with the charge items. All right, so I'm going to pull up an inventory item. I'm going to sell an Athens desk. We talked about the ability to do locations before quantity. Let's talk about a reserved quantity. What the reserved quantity allows me to do is to track or set aside quantities on the sales order from assembly orders, production orders, or from purchase orders. So I've got a customer that wants this desk. I got 10 coming in on a PO next week. I can now reserve one of those 10 items onto this purchase, from the purchase order to the sales order. Okay, so I can make the connection back and forth. Reservations can be required, optional, or excluded. So those can be globally set, but they could also be set by item. So you could say, I don't want to allow reservations, or I require reservations. Again, what it's going to do is it's going to connect the sales order to the purchase order automatically. Pricing and taxes. Nice thing about taxes is they're available on the PO side as well. So if I've got use tax and that sort of thing that I want to track, I think there's a flag that I don't have exposed on here. Yeah, I don't have it on. But it would allow me to flag this as a use tax transaction. So it's not going to increment or increase the amount that I'm paying my vendor, but it's going to record a transaction in my tax ledger that makes a note that I have to pay it. Okay, so most systems, when you say use tax, you either have to go manually calculate it later, or it attempts to add tax to the purchase invoice. The system doesn't do that. So quantity received, quantity invoice. Just like we saw on the sales order side, I have the ability to receive against a PO on the PO itself, or if I've implemented and enabled the warehousing function, I can receive against a warehouse receipt. And we got full put away, directed putaways, all that sort of stuff behind the scenes. And then in terms of dates, we've got, I think there's actually 6 of them, 2 of them I've exposed here, but planned receipt date, expected receipt date, et cetera. Since it popped up, I like to show this one. Microsoft has spent a lot of time putting some help into the system, and it's really good. It's really good help. So hovering over this planned receipt date, you can see that this is a calculated field, and it actually gives you a tremendous amount of information about this field and how it works and how you'd use it. I didn't have to go hit F1, I didn't have to do anything other than hover over the field to get that information. Microsoft continues to increase and develop and deploy tremendous amount of help and access to help in the system. So that is purchasing. So in terms of posting then, I can print this PO, I can send it via email just like we saw in the sales order acknowledgement, and then my posting gives me the ability to, well, I can't do it because I don't have quantity on there, but I can receive and invoice in one step if I want to. Okay, in terms of payment processing, I've got the ability, obviously, to generate payments. I can create physical checks. I can integrate with banking systems in terms of positive pay for my checks. And we have the ability to do the electronic payments for AP. So if I want to pay my vendors electronically, I can create an EFT file and send that to my bank. Business Central has the ability to automatically connect behind the scenes to send those files to the bank. I don't know of any bank that allows you to send a file without the dual authentication, but if your bank does, the system can actually accommodate that. All right, just a little bit about approvals while we're here. The system does have approvals throughout, so I have the ability to approve transactions or master records. So I could approve a customer, for example, that's been created, and I want to review it before they can issue any sales orders. Okay, so that would be an approval. I can do approval on transactions, so maybe it's a purchase order approval that needs to go through a hierarchy. Okay, these are conditionally configured in terms of data values, but also what data I'm looking at. So in my customer example, maybe I created a new customer and that requires approval. Now, if the customer already exists and I increase their credit limit, I want that to go through an approval process. But if their phone number changes, I don't care. So it's not just monitoring a change in the customer record, it's monitoring a specific field change, for example, that would require an approval. We got approvals on payments, we got approvals on journal entries, that sort of thing. All right, so we have the ability to do approvals within the system, but we also have an integration back to Outlook that would allow me to do approvals. So I'm just gonna click on this one to show you how this can work. So there's some set of information that comes over that says this particularly, oh, that has approved. There we go. So this one says that what I've got is, here we go. There's one that's open. So what I've got here is a purchase order that requires approval. So in my Outlook, and I'm using Outlook online, but again, regular Outlook would do the same thing. It's telling me that I've got this transaction to approve, and I can send via Flow, again, another Office application, whatever information that I maybe want to send to my end user. They have the ability then to approve or reject within Outlook the transaction. So it could be a customer, it could be a purchase order, it could be whatever. In Outlook, approve it. I don't have to go over to Business Central to review, although I can, but I don't have to go over there to approve the transaction. While we're in Outlook, I like to show you a couple more things. And this one is, it's called Business Insights. And what this little connection allows me to do, and again, this is available both online Outlook as well as my desktop Outlook. I can connect my Business Central system to Outlook via the email address of the user that sent me the email. So I sent myself an email from my GL account. If I open up this Business Central add-in, I'm going to get information that's tied to this contact in Outlook for me. So this happens to be a vendor. So what I'm going to get is vendor information. So I can see their current balance, I can see what they have in outstanding orders, I get an aging, and I can drill into any of these transactions. Nice thing about this is interactive as well. So I want to know how old these transactions are, I want to know what the transactions are themselves, I can drill into it, I can pull them up. I can also create transactions from here. So and this is a vendor, so I can create a new purchase order, purchase invoice, etc. If this was a customer, I could do the same thing. So I'd have visibility to what their current aging is, what their past orders are, et cetera. What I really like about this is in terms of a team interacting with customers, they could never again say, I didn't know, because if anybody communicates to you via email and they are set up in Business Central, I'm gonna have at my fingertips information about their account. So there's two integration points with Outlook. We already talked about Power BI, Excel, and Word. So that's the Office family integrating with Business Central. All right, one other piece I like to show is, and actually I'm going to go to a vendor list to talk about this. So if I take up a list, and any list does this, maybe notice this little Edit in Excel button that's on my menu. All right, so this Edit in Excel button. So anywhere there's a list, most of them I have this button. What this does is it's going to open up an Excel file that allows me the ability to do a two-way integration with whatever, in this case, I'm on vendors, with these records. So I can dump that data into Excel if I want to. I can refresh it. So instead of just taking a data dump, I can get an updated set of data. I can publish data back. So if I want to update phone numbers or territories or terms codes or whatever I might want to do, I can update that in Excel and then publish it back to Business Central. The thing about the publish back is it's following my security model as well as my data integrity model. So if I don't have the ability to update vendors, I'm not going to be able to edit them in Excel and then publish it back to Business Central because it's not going to let me because I don't have security rights to it. Something like a terms code. So if I've got Net 30 set up and I set up Marcus's terms code, that's not going to work unless Marcus's term code is actually set up in Business Central. So I'm going to get an error on that transaction that says I can't upload it because it's not valid. All right, so data is validated and the security model is maintained. But I can get this data in Excel, again, two-way integration. So it's not just with vendors, it's my chart of accounts, my items, customers, vendors, even journal entries, et cetera, can be done back and forth via the edit in Excel option. So that's the last of the Office integration points. I want to just briefly look at sort of the other interesting points of the system, which is around inventory, and I just want to open that up briefly. So we do have a full inventory system, very robust distribution modules if you're interested in them, but I have the ability to set up as many items as I want. I have different types of items, so I can do an item, a service item, and a non-inventory item. This just deals with how my costing and my quantities are being tracked behind the scenes. We've got the full ability to do all the different costing methods, FIFO, LIFO, specific, average, standards. All the tax information is available to us. We do have a full replenishment and planning segment within inventory. Again, you don't have to implement these areas at all, but I've got the ability to say, how do I want to replenish it? Purchase order, production order, or assembly order? Do I make to stock? Do I make to order? And then in terms of planning, do I want to do a fixed reorder point, minimum, maximum, lot for lot calculations? So all of these types of planning utilities then integrate with what we call a requisition worksheet, which would help me in the purchasing side of things. So it's going to look at all the demand that I have in the system. It's going to look at how do I replenish my inventory? Do I buy it? Do I make it? And then the requisition worksheet is going to give me a whole bunch of suggestions on what I should be doing. Do I need to create an assembly order, a production order? Do I need to buy something? Do I need to cancel the PO because now I had a canceled sales order that was tied to the PO, or I'm now going to have more quantity than I want on hand, et cetera. So lots of feature functionality available around inventory. We also have a jobs module. So jobs would be around project accounting. So we have the ability to track time, issue materials, do budgeting, cost analysis, that sort of thing. So we do have a full time entry, time approval system included with the jobs component. The jobs component is included with the base pricing. So if you look at the base pricing, that's actually included in the base price. Two additional modules that actually everything else I've talked about is available in the base pricing except manufacturing and then service. So those would be an additional charge. Manufacturing module, again, is the multi-level bill of materials with routings, back flushing of inventory, all that sort of stuff. And then the service modules are around if you think HVAC, so I sell a piece of equipment and then I'm going to have warranty tracking on it, or I'm going to send somebody out to do service, that sort of thing. So that's also available in the product. All right, that takes us to our time for today. So I very much appreciate your attendance. If you've got any other questions, I'll hang on here for a bit. Otherwise, I wish you well on the rest of your afternoon.